Before I introduce panel 2 to you, I'd like to recognize two very important individuals that have joined us. The chairman of our board of trustees, Mr. Mark McKean, and our chancellor emeritus, Frank Gornick. And with that, we will move into panel 2. Panel 2 is going to talk to us about what do we have out in the West Side that's already there, infrastructure-wise, that we can build upon as we move forward in this project. Please welcome with me our moderator for panel 2, Jackson Gualco, and our panelists, William Bordeaux, Sonia Harris, Robert Say, Dr. Van Horn, and Ricardo Leanes. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Mr. McKean always gets nervous when I get by a microphone because we were in the same ag leadership class and I know stuff. So, but I promise I won't talk about any of it today because we're here for substantive good reasons. So, first of all, a good round of applause for the prior panel led by the former mayor of Salinas, Dennis Donahue. And every time I have a date shake, I'm going to think about that story, Dennis. I just want you to know. So just imagine for a moment if we didn't have the interstate highway system, if we hadn't sunk the spike at Ogden, Utah, if we didn't send men to the moon, we would not be anywhere close to being the kind of civilization we are, technologically speaking. And that connectivity that we just assume and take for granted is something that we're now confronting in an entirely new way. And so it really is the bold new frontier about whether the United States can take the next step to be globally competitive. Think about the investments that are being made in Europe and particularly in China. That they're even talking about a new Silk Road from China into Europe that would connect that continent and subcontinent. So we're under tremendous economic pressure, and we need to get it done and get it done correctly. So how do we deal with that, particularly from a rural California perspective here on the west side of the San Joaquin, is what this panel is going to address. So without further ado, I would like to have Chancellor Van Horn here come up and start off our panel. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Jack. As we've heard in our first panel and our opening keynote with the Assembly member Caballero, broadband is essential for ag tech and ag production. And I want to speak and frame the issue around the implications of the lack of broadband as it relates to economic development, farming efficiently, regulatory compliance, as well as the immense educational implications for our residents on the west side. And as you know, ag tech is really poised from seed to shelf, from sky to beneath the soil, to resolve many on-farm problems and to create those next-generation jobs. This series has focused on those issues over the last few years. We know that ag tech is an emerging force with great potential in the San Joaquin Valley, home of the ironic juxtaposition of the nation's top 5 farm gate counties, where 2/3 of our residents are disadvantaged. And it takes a second to get your arm around that, your head around that. And the qualitative findings that Terry Brasi, our interim director of the Farm of the Future, shared earlier really represent that growers are poised in 2018 on the west side to begin significant adoption of devices like drones and many different types of sensors, integration software, connecting small blocks of permanent crops to inputs. And farming efficiently is absolutely essential with ag tech. It enables the mandatory management of inputs. We know there are significant restrictions on water. Each drop must be used and reused with the new degree of precision in the 21st century. Fertilizer and pesticide applications are both expensive and heavily monitored. California, due in some part to the climate change, is invasive pest central for both bugs and plants. Farmers need to be able to send a photo of an invasive species for instant identification. This is another urgent issue. Missing a pest leads to infestation and massive crop losses. On the regulatory side, we've had here before the California Department of Food and Ag Secretary Karen Ross. We have been working with her in developing this session over the last year. She recently told me, hey, Stu, we have layers of regulations we didn't have 15 years ago. She told us about the State Food Ag and Board during a briefing on new water rules earlier this year. Farmers need online interactive applications for permits. They need water use and quality monitoring, food safety tests, reports for water, fertilizers, and pesticides. Recently, the State Water Resources Control Board indicated that in this next year, they'll implement new rules for surface water allocation, recycling, runoff, which includes fertilizers and pesticide compliance, salt and nitrate management, and overall water quality. Meanwhile, in Sacramento, the Department of Water Resources will implement the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, which requires meticulous accounting of groundwater use. It's a game changer. Surface water and groundwater are tightly controlled. No water is unregulated, and water is essential in the Valley. And California growers, the original innovators, are already doing their part here in the Valley, using 8% less water today than they did 20 years ago. That's generated a 96% increase in economic value and 57% increase in yield. Every input, fertilizers, pesticides, must be precisely managed, she told me. And it really is, we've got to go faster. Farmers need whole systems. And let me end with some massive educational implications. For us at West Hills, this is an access to higher education issue. In the Valley, we have 11% of the population, only 6% of the state's bachelor's degrees. Access through broadband to workforce training and higher education opportunities in our rural communities is essential. And you know, this isn't sufficient in our classrooms anymore. Phones can assist our students, but it's not the total solution. We're looking at delivering education and transforming the way we teach and learn in the 21st century. We have internet-based learning management systems that students need to access. We have this burgeoning, incredible effort in development of open educational resources that our colleges are undertaking. There's applications and software. There's distance learning and online education that is being inhibited by the lack of access to broadband. We at West Hills are trying to fit what we do in delivering education around the needs of today's adults. We can't do that without high-speed broadband service. All of us have re-engineered how our teachers teach and our students learn. Also has growth implications. We know that birth rates are flatlined here in the Valley. We know that high school enrollment graduation numbers are stagnant through 2022. We're looking for ways to grow demand. One way to do that is through the expansion of online delivery of education. We're hampered in our ability to provide that access without broadband. And finally, I just want to say thank you to what I've already heard today, some incredible words. And I want to end with this, that the lack of broadband access to West Hills is the reason why some of our communities stay poor, how chronic illness manifests over time, we heard that from Davina, and how social mobility is stunted in the Valley. So let's get this solved. Thanks very much.